After a 5-year hiatus, the Indy Mile is back on the AFT schedule. This historic track was part of the original Grand National Championship season back in 1954 and has always been at the top of the list for riders and fans alike. Today, we'll be talking to the 2013 Super Twins champion Brad Baker, who was the last Twins winner there in 2015. We'll also be talking to the 2015 Indy Mile GNC2 winner, Nick Armstrong, who will be looking to earn his first ever AFT Production Twins win at Indy. This is the AFT Show, presented this week to you by Harley-Davidson. Welcome to the AFT Show. I'm Scotty Dubler, the voice of American Flat Track, the co-host of the podcast Off the Groove. Beside me is the beautiful blonde. Let's bring her in, Kristen Beat. What's going on?
Hey, Scotty. Hey, how are you? I know you have two different helmets this week. Tell me about those.
Just the red, white, and blue one's my last helmet that I raced in when I was still racing flat track. So it's a little bit older. It's a Bell helmet. And then the Arai helmet up there is one that I got from Arai after I stopped racing. I was doing a little bit of street riding. So those are my two helmets. I try to switch them out every week and just see if anybody notices, but keep it fresh. Yeah. What have you been doing? Do you have a good week?
I did. I have been reading some books, watching some film, getting ready for this AFT race at the Indy Mile, but I also did some weeding. We have some weeds around the backyard, and so we also have deer, and so I won't use the spray because I don't want to hurt the deer, so I'm out there pulling weeds. So if I look a little sunburn or I have a farmer tan, that's why.
Oh, wow. I just now noticed you are red, so it must be nice and hot down there in North Carolina.
Yeah, and good weather for doing a few house chores, so.
Right on. Well, that's pretty cool. When you get done, you can come over and mow my grass. How's that?
Is it Dr. Pepper involved? I know you've got some extra around the house since you quit.
I don't share very much, but I'm trying to quit. I'm still just drinking one a day, so I'm doing pretty good on that. Hey, like you said just a second ago, big news. Indy Mile is back, and I am so excited about it.
Everyone I've talked to, the entire paddock, just seems to collectively be not only just excited about this race, but like genuinely love this track. Everyone who I've had conference calls in the past week with has told me that like they are focusing in because they feel like this is a track they can win at. And I think it's interesting when you hear that from multiple riders, because every weekend you go into a race thinking you can win, but at this race, it really comes down to rider talent, rider skill, rider finesse, a lot of horsepower. So it's like all those things encompassed into this track, and what it demands is exciting to follow.
It's so cool too, because it was part of the original Grand National Circuit back in 1954, and a lot of the legends of our sport have won there. We've raced there 47 times, and this year it's part of the Indy 500 weekend, which will be on Sunday, the day after we're done racing there. Like I said, who's who of race winners have raced there and won there. The 2015 race winner was Brad Baker, who's also, a 2013 Grand National champion, and the GNC2 winner that year was Nick Armstrong. And that's just two of the names, and that's two people we're going to talk to a little bit later. I've got some more stats. J.D. Beach won there twice on a single, and Vanderkoy won there once on a Honda, and Shana Texter's actually won there before on a single. So that's just some of the people who we'll be keeping our eyes on.
Oh, 100%. I think it's exciting to kind of look at how deep each field is, including in the Production Twins class. You mentioned Nick Armstrong, but there's just so much talent in that Production Twins class. And if Chad Coast decides to run double duty, you've also got Rispoli, and you have Danny Eslick, who's that wild card entry, capable of really just anything. It's exciting to see that class grow as well.
Yeah, last week we talked to Dalton Gauthier, and we also talked to Colby Carlisle, and those are two riders we'll also be keep an eye on in that Super Twins class. Both of them, they may shine here. Both of them were excited to be getting on a mile. This is now the second and third mile. Well, however you want to look at it. It's the second time we'll be going to a mile. First time this year. We also have the Springfield Mile coming up, but I think that's where the Yamahas are going to shine, and possibly even the XG 750 Harleys might do well there because they can use that horsepower and get down those long straightaways.
Yeah, and speaking of, last week we spoke with Colby Carlisle and Dalton Gauthier, and if you guys have missed any of our American Flat Track shows, all you got to do, log on to NBC Sports Gold, check out Track Pass. You can watch the AFT show. You can watch the Racing from Volusia, update yourself, remind yourself of what it's like to hear those engines roaring, and always on race weekend, you can watch the racing live on the Track Pass app on NBC Sports Gold. So if you guys are missing any of these shows, just rewind it back, take a step back, and watch them again.
And you can always go back and watch the other races too. I've gone back and watched Volusia, night number 2, the singles race, at least 10 times. It was so exciting. It's so exciting. Well, Kristen. Today on the show, we've got our coworker who we work with. I'm right beside him in the booth, Brad the Bullet Baker. Like I said, he won there the last time we were there in the twins class in 2015. And we have our GNC2 winner from 2015, Nick Armstrong. Both of them on the show today. I can't wait to hear from them. But first, let's get a word from our sponsor, Harley-Davidson. Welcome back to the AFT Show. Like we said before we went to the break, we're going to talk to the 2015 Super Twins winner. Let's bring him in. Your 2013 Grand National champion, Brad the Bullet Baker. Hey, Brad, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming by.
Hey, thank you very much, guys. It's a pleasure to be on the show for the first time.
So, Brad, you have been posting on Instagram some micro sprints. Did you get to drive it? What's going on over there? Tell us about what's happening with the four wheels in your life.
Yeah, I was able to get out in a car for the first time this past weekend. Been working on getting this micro sprint ready to go since earlier this year. Have some really good friends that have been helping me out with it. So it's been fun just learning the car, not even driving it yet, just learning the car, what it needs and things like that. But yeah, I was able to get out in it for the first time at a little short track here in Michigan, not too far from where I live, called Lucky Thumb, and get a little bit of throttle therapy and adrenaline back in my life. It was a blast. I can't wait for more now.
Well, Brad, I saw the video. I knew it was you right away because you're up in the high stuff, the highest line around the track, just like you rode your motorcycle. So is that the feel that you like? Is that what you enjoy? And how hard was it getting used to the hand controls?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I really thought that I'd catch on to car racing pretty quickly. I mean, obviously I haven't raced yet, but just driving a car pretty quickly, just because a lot of the way that you drive a car was kind of the way that I like to ride a bike. You know, I was always one to be using the cushion coming in up top and steering the bike with the rear wheel, and really that's how you drive a sprint car is pitching it in the corner sideways and driving on the right rear tire. So I already kind of had this in my mind that, hey, what I was going to do, and I caught on to it pretty quick. My hand controls were actually worked out good. I was really surprised that they worked out as good as they did just for the first time out. I have basically like can't even call it a steering wheel. It's more of a steering device now. It's like a U-shaped device, and then I have a quad thumb throttle on the right, and then Behringer brakes hooked me up with one of their thumb brakes for the street bike for the left. So essentially kind of, you know, control the brake and the throttle like you would on a quad, at least the throttle side. And it has a quarter turn steering box on it. So when you get all crossed up and you're, you know, having the counter steer, you're not all the way, you know, upside down with your hand controls. So yeah, it all worked out really good. And just with a little bit amount of seat time that I got up to speed pretty quick.
So, I mean, I know it might be a little premature, but is this the next step for Brad Baker? Like, is this where you're going next? Are we going to see you in a micro sprint anytime soon, racing?
Yeah, I mean, we'll see where it goes. Obviously, my bread and butter is still with you guys with the American Flat Track. So, and that happens on the weekends. But on the off weekends, yeah, I'd love to be able to get do some racing, and hoping that here before the year's up that I'll at least be able to get one race underneath my belt. There's a lot of racing for cars, especially in Indiana. It's really the dirt car capital world, you know, the whole state of Indiana. So yeah, we'll just see where it goes. But yeah, I mean, there's some big races for micros especially. So yeah, I'd like to be able to see if I can excel at it.
You need to send me and Scotty some Brad Baker tees so we can represent when you're racing again.
Yeah, I can definitely do that.
Well, Brad, speaking of Indiana, we're going to Indianapolis, back where we raced in 2015, and you won that night. What are your thoughts when they announced that we're going back to Indianapolis?
I was pumped up when I heard that they, you know, got Indy back on the schedule. I mean, the Indy Mile is one of the most legendary races that we have to go to, and it was a shame when I heard, last year that they were possibly going to resurface the mile and there was going to be no motorsports racing back on the mile ever again. And actually, when I heard that, I went to the Hoosier 100 race because I'd never been to the Hoosier 100. And I was like, well, I want to watch a race at the Indy Mile for, what I thought could have been the last time. And, it is my favorite mile. I mean, that place is awesome. The race, awesome, the ride. And I, won the last race there. And that was really my favorite win of my career just because of, how hard of a race it was to win and how it all played out for me. But so yeah, I was stoked. The only thing that I'm not stoked about is that I'm going to be watching it, not racing it.
The paddock kind of seems to be in consensus. They love this place. What is so lovable specifically about this track? Is it the composition? Is it the fans there? Like, what makes it so lovable for a rider?
There's multiple things that make it, lovable for a rider. I mean, to start out with, I mean, the first like 2 practice sessions there, qualifying sessions, are like the most fun that you can ever have on a flat track motorcycle. I mean, it just has the perfect amount of cushion, to where you can. I mean, at least me on when I raced there. I mean, qualifying, you never even had to let off. I mean, it was just such a perfect, like nice, 4 to 6 inch cushion with a nice base underneath it, and just made it to where, yeah, you could almost hold the bike wide open all the way around. So for one, it's fun to race, and then usually it'll start to get a little brushed off and get down to more of a groove on the bottom, depending on what the weather's like, and even when it gets like that, it's fun because then it comes more into the chess match of mile racing where you're setting yourself up for the last lap, and even that's fun. But in years past, we've always been there during the fair or MotoGP, and you come off at turn 4 and you see the Ferris wheel over on the right hand side, and that's always cool. And then the years that we had MotoGP in Indy, I mean, the grandstands were packed, and there's this bunch of people from the whole motorcycle industry there. So yeah, Indy's special in a lot of ways.
Brad, there's 3 classes going to be running. About 24 riders, the way I looked at it through the 2015 results, raced there before. Who should we be looking out for? Who's going to do well there in each of the 3 classes?
Oh, that's a hard question there, Scotty, because we got a lot of talented riders right now that are on good machines. Yeah, I mean, they are. And I guess let's start from the top in the premier class. I mean, obviously, Jared Mees is probably the guy that has a big X on his back right now. He won all the miles last year and won the first 2 races of the season. So I think he has the big X on his back. And then, obviously there's Briar Bauman, and he's always going to be strong everywhere we go. I think those 2 riders are the riders that are going to be, you can just count on them being up front wherever we go. One rider that I, was going to hope to see up front, and I think is, has a good chance of being up front, will be number 4, Brian Smith on the Harley-Davidson XG750R. I think, with Brian's experience on the miles, and especially at Indy, and what the Vance and Hines Harley-Davidson crew have been working on getting that bike a little bit better, I really feel that Brian should be up front. I mean, I really feel like he will. And then Sammy Albert is actually a past winner of Indy, and has Kenny Coolbeth as his mentor mechanic, who's also won Indy a few times. So really can't count them out. I think they'll be strong.
Sammy had a good run at Volusia.
He really did. I feel like him and Kenny are jiving really well, and Sammy, really, I don't think we've seen the best out of Sammy yet. So, I think he'll definitely be up front. I'd like to see JD Beach up there as well with the the Essen Yamaha team. JD's won Indy twice on a single. I know because I was right behind him and he beat me. So I was actually just texting with JD here just a little while ago, and he's all pumped up about Indy, and just hoping that he's ready. He's just hoping that the bike is. So I really feel that JD could be up front as long as the bike is cooperating for him.
Give me a couple names. Give me a couple names in the production twins class, and then just a couple names we should be looking out for in that AFT singles class as well.
Obviously Corey Texter, number one of the past champion. I think he's going to be the strongest. Then Ryan Barnes and James Rispoli on the Harley-Davidson. I believe those three are probably going to be the most competitive. But then you got Nick Armstrong as well. That I think has won Indy on the last one to win Indy on a production twin. So those four, and then in the singles class, I think all of them, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
I'm so looking forward to watching that race, especially on a mile. It really, equalizes everybody. So I wouldn't be surprised to see 12 to all 18 riders in one pack on the mile here coming up. But I don't know. I thought I was going to pick one person. I think Chad Coase is going to be strong. He has probably maybe the most experience out of a lot of the riders, and the Suzuki that he's running has been very, very strong as far as horsepower wise. So I feel like Chad could have it for him for sure.
Well, and you know Chad Coase personally, and like just from my experience working with him last year in this, his confidence is in a completely different place, and it's so cool to see. Like, what have you noticed from him, even off the bike, maybe that's going to help him this season?
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned that, Kristen, and me being a good friend with Chad, knowing that his being mentally in the right preparation is huge for him. So he kind of has a switch where he'll either be on or off, and right now he's been on. And I think what's really contributing to that the most is having a great team behind him and not having to worry about the motorcycles and money and things as much. I think he's really more relaxed, and that he's able to just focus on training and knows that, hey, the bikes are getting taken care of, and he doesn't really have to worry about that, and he's confident in those.
Racing.
What's that?
He can just focus on racing this year, and people at home may not really understand that, because when we watch football or baseball or basketball, any of these sports, it's like all their job is to play that sport, right? But in racing, these guys have to do both. They have to prep their bikes, they have to get there, they have to do their hotels, and all of that taxes you during the week and takes away from the weekend. But like Chad this year, he went from having to do that to now having everything taken care of, where he just has to ride the bike, and like we're seeing it.
Yeah, no, that's 100% a huge deal for him. I mean, yeah, like I said, in any other sport, you gotta wash your cleats and your shorts or something, and you go back play baseball. And
not even that, they don't wash their cleats anymore.
So there you go. Yeah, it's like in racing motorcycles, I mean, you're maintaining and building a machine and trying to refine it and make it better all the time. And if you're having to do that yourself and trying to train and do everything else that comes along with the sport, you get overwhelmed, and then your mind is kind of out of it. So yeah, Chad is confident in the bike that he has now. It's a great team. It's worked good for him. He gets a lot of experience on it now. And yeah, that's what's making the biggest difference for him.
Brad, a couple of changes this year. I want your opinion on the grid, 4 riders on each row, and then timed races for the main events. What are your thoughts?
I liked it. I liked it a lot at Volusia. I mean, I think I was a little worried about the starting line, just kind of maybe spreading people out too much. But going into turn 1, everybody got back together, and it was safe. There was no turn 1 incidents, so that was great. It makes it a little bit more pressure on the riders now, because if you don't get a top 2 in your semifinal, getting that front row start is harder now, because instead of getting top 3, it's top 2, and then being spaced apart. So definitely puts a little bit more pressure on the riders to qualify better and to get that front row start. But all in all, I think it worked out good. The time races plus 2 laps, I like that too. I mean, it was awesome to see 25 laps in both the production class and the singles class, which used to be 16 laps before. And I think all the riders were stoked about it as well, because they had more time to get things done. I mean, 16 laps used to go by pretty quick, so having 25 laps was cool. The Super Twins, I mean, they ran 38 laps there on Saturday, and I would almost like to see it shorten up just a little bit, just because the race kind of got strung out to where they were spread apart and wasn't nearly as exciting as what I'd like it to be. But it was also cool to see more racing at the same time. But I know that they're going to be refining the time a lot more for the miles, where I think we're going to be right at 25 laps again on the miles, I think. So, yeah, I think both changes were a positive for sure.
Brad,
I think, go ahead.
Go ahead, Kristen. You got one more.
We're all over it. Brad, I think it's really interesting to get your perspective on like what you see and how you see the series developing, because as a former champion, like you have such a great following in this sport. And I think that in a lot of ways you kind of vocalize what the fans are wanting. And a conversation that we had back at Volusia was kind of indicative of that. And so my question is to you, I mean, what would you like to see in the future? Like, is there something that maybe you're going to try to implement in the future, or any ideas that you have for the sport?
Yeah, I mean, I am very happy to be still involved in the sport and be able to, try to influence my, what my ideas and my opinions are on things. It's actually what kind of strives me to get up every day still. So yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of a hard question. I mean, I really like the way that the American flat track is heading right now. I mean, it's great that we're on NBC Sports, and the professionalism of the sport has been raised. I mean, I was listening to a podcast yesterday with Dave Aldana, who is a past legend of the sport back in really what you would call more of the heyday of the sport of American flat track, and the way he put it, like, they were professional and they took things serious back in the day, but now, the way things are, it's made the professionalism of our sport, raised that much more and got us in the spotlight of motorsports, and just, we're considered athletes now. It's like before we were just racers. Now we're athletes,
You guys are athletes.
Yeah. So I like all that perspective, but I would just like to see us go to, the best tracks we possibly can go to. I always say that good racetracks lead to good racing, puts on a good show. So things like going to the place like Indy Mile, that's one of them. So as long as we go to good venues and have a great racetrack, we're going to have a great show. And I think that's the number one most important thing that we have to do.
Well, Brad, we appreciate you coming by. And I just got to say, next time you're grilling out, just throw me an invite, or at least put a hamburger on the grill for me. I mean, come on, man.
Please and thank you.
Yeah, I definitely will. Maybe we'll have to get some grilling going out on the racetrack for lunch. That sounds better.
Yeah, you're the grill master. So, man, we just appreciate you coming on the show. We appreciate your insight, and we can't wait to see you at Indy.
All right. Thank you guys very much. Have a great one. Look forward to seeing you guys too.
That's Brad the Bullet Baker. We'll be right back if we get a word from our sponsor, Harley-Davidson. Welcome back to the AFT Show. I'm Scotty Dibbler. Beside me is Kristen Beat, and now let's bring in the final guest of the day, your 2015 GNC2 winner from the Indy Mile. It is Nick Armstrong, number 60. Hey, Nick, what's going on? Welcome to the show.
Hey, Scotty. Thanks for having me on.
What have you been up to? I haven't seen you since Volusia a couple weeks ago. Where are you at? What have you been doing?
Yeah, after Volusia, we headed up to Ohio, staying at a friend's house here. Just been working on bikes, doing a little bit of riding.
Obviously, racing in the Production Twins class this year and returning to the Indy Mile, which is a place that has treated you very well in the past. I mean, what are your expectations moving into the Indy Mile once again?
I mean, heading to Indy, one of my favorite racetracks. Expectations are high for sure. Down in Volusia, we had good speed, had a little mechanical, but getting all that fixed now. And yeah, should be ready to go for Indy.
The last time we were there, Nick, you took the win. You're riding in what was then the GNC2 class. You're on a Suzuki TL 1000. What's going to be different this year when we go back? It's 5 years later, but now you're on your Yamaha that you built yourself. You and your dad and your uncle maintain the bikes. What's the biggest difference between riding that big Suzuki and the Yamaha you've got?
A few things. I mean, definitely the weight. that Suzuki was heavy, you know. Like I think after the main event, it weighed 358 off the racetrack.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was a big bike, a lot of horsepower. Was kind of tough to get through the corners, but once you got that thing on the straightaway, it took off, you know. So with my bikes now a little lighter, a little better through the corners. Maybe not as much horsepower, but our corner speed will definitely be better.
Nick, before we got on this call, you had mentioned in conversation with Scotty when we were just kind of going back and forth how much you like this track. So it suits you well. What about it do you like, and what about it kind of plays to your advantage?
In the past, I've just always done really well on the miles. Like in the singles class, I podiumed and won races on miles mainly, you know. And I just really like the shape. It kind of being more of a paper clip, and then it has really good dirt. So and it's just fun to ride, and yeah, I've just always done well there.
Nick, you got some deep roots in flat track. Your uncle actually, Itch, I think that's what they call him, used
Yeah.
to build bikes and used to wrench for Wayne Rainey. And if I'm not mistaken, that's why you run the number 60, because that was Wayne's number when he was racing flat track.
Yeah. When I earned my national number, obviously I couldn't pick 44. And so for me, the next best choice would have been 60, you know. Wayne has kind of helped me through my racing career. His dad, Sandy, was a big part of my program. And so, yeah, just kind of paying respect to him and running the 60.
I feel like numbers are such like family things. Like we inherit numbers almost like we inherit last names. It's such a family sport. And I know you mentioned earlier that you're in Ohio right now. How is that going? What are you doing up there? How is your training going down?
Good. The guy I stay with here, Paul Forbush, he's a club member at a local short track here. So we're able to get out there and ride during the week and practice and stuff. So just to stay sharp on the bike and stuff like that. And then there's a nice bike path nearby that I go cycle on. And so, yeah, just staying sharp.
Nick, you got sixth the first night at Volusia, you know, a real competitive race. And then you had that mechanical with the 12th place finish on the second night, currently ninth in the point standings. What was your biggest takeaway from Volusia? Did you learn a lot?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the biggest thing, you know, is we were competitive, which is nice, you know, and we just got to keep pushing forward, clean a few things up, and I think we can be real competitive in this class.
You say clean a few things up. Like what specifically kind of did you go back and reevaluate from that night?
Yeah, I think the first main event, I just wasn't paying close enough attention to the racetrack, and they dumped a bunch of water down before our main event. And then now for me too, like it's different being first main event, where in previous years, you know, we got to watch the singles and then we got on the racetrack, you know. So I just got to keep a better eye on the racetrack just for adjustments, because I made adjustments that first night and we went the wrong way. The track was slower and I thought it was going to be faster, you know. And so I kind of struggled in that first main event. And then in the second night, we had a good main event going and I was moving forward, but just had a small mechanical. So I got to clean that up and also just keep an eye on the racetrack.
I think go ahead.
No, you go ahead, Kristen.
I think you bring up kind of an interesting point, is where your class falls in the night's program changes your strategy so much. So for fans at home that maybe don't follow it as closely, can you kind of explain to folks what that means for you as a rider? Because you're the first bike on the track. You guys are the first ones out there and you kind of have to break it in. So explain what that's like and how you maybe notice what the track is doing without actually riding it.
Yeah, that's the hard part, you know, because so we ride during the day and we do our semis and everything during the day, and then the sun goes down and then we're first ones on the racetrack, you know. And for the other classes, they get to watch us and kind of see how the track has maybe changed, you know, where we kind of really have to keep an eye on it. And that's just where experience comes into play. And you kind of got to keep an eye on the track, see what they're doing, if they're putting water down or whatever they're doing, and kind of just I guess take your best guess, you know.
So Nick, how are you approaching the double headers? Is it harder on you mentally or physically, or have you even noticed a change yet?
No, I mean, I actually like it, you know, like being down in Volusia, getting 3 days of riding to me was really cool, you know, because you can just kind of keep working on your setup and just more dialed in, you know.
So we are going back to Indy. You won there the last time we were there. What are your expectations for 2020? It's a doubleheader, like we've been mentioning. They all will be this year. What are your expectations going in for both nights?
Expectations going in there, I feel like we can run up front. I feel really good on the motorcycle right now. We're getting engines back together right now. I have a really good mile engine. I like the racetrack, so I think we can run up front.
How would you describe the production twins class this year, especially? And like when we talk about expectations, you can't have expectations without competition, right? So it's like everywhere I look, there's so much talent in the American Flat Track Series this year. It's hard to, at any race, isolate one person to be the guy to beat, and especially in the production twins class. So, I mean, kind of describe for me what you see when you look at the production twins field.
I mean, it's diverse. You know, we have different manufacturers running up front. And there's a lot of good guys. So, you know, you got to be on your game and you got to qualify well. You got to have a good semi to set yourself up for a good starting spot in the main event and get a good start. You know, starts are key. Like down in Volusia, you could see that. So, yeah, it's a good class. It's a very competitive class. I feel like the level of teams is very even and the equipment's even. So that just, you know, good racing, good competition.
You mentioned how even they are. Does that put more pressure on the rider then, or is there anything else you guys can do to the bike to make it where it's faster than everybody else's?
Yeah, I mean, it's getting your setup for that track, that day, that time. You know what I'm saying? So you get that dialed in, and then yeah, then it's up to the rider. It's up to me to go out there and perform.
Well, Nick, we appreciate you stopping by.
Yep.
Good luck at Indy. You know where the top of the box is. We'll see you there. How's that?
Yeah, I've been there before, so yeah, hope to do it again.
That's Nick Armstrong. We'll get a word from our sponsors, and we'll be right back to the AFT Show. Welcome back to the AFT Show, ladies and gentlemen. Well, we heard from two awesome riders, and both of them have some confidence. You know, as we go into Indy, Brad's going to take his confidence into the booth with us, but Nick is going to go and do battle in that production twins class, which is a stacked class, Kristen.
Oh, 100%. That class has so much talent, so much depth in it. And I mean, just really all the classes do, speaking to what Brad told us. And it was so funny because when you asked him his picks, I mean, I don't think he realized how many picks he was giving us, because when you start to think about it, you continue to progress and you realize, oh my gosh, everyone in this class is capable of winning. And that makes the racing so exciting, but also very exciting. Brad getting in a race car. Like, y'all, I hope he just goes straight to the top to NASCAR. That'd be so cool to see. I'm so excited to just be watching Brad get back in a car. And it's like, you can tell he's excited about it too. What y'all didn't get to see is when he hopped off, we talked to him a little bit, and it's like, he's going back out this coming weekend and he's going to try to get a race going. And it's like, I just want my Brad Baker shirt so I can like rock it and support Brad Baker a little more.
Absolutely. I've got one or two already from when he got hurt. We did a lot of, you know, we bought a lot of stuff and they sold a lot of stuff to help raise money for Brad. So I've got a couple of them in my closet. I have to get them out and start wearing them on the weekends when we're not at the Grand Nationals. So tell me one thing you learned from this show there, Kristen.
You know, I really enjoyed talking to Nick Armstrong, because something that I didn't think about was the change in our schedule during the night show, how the production twins bikes are now the first out on the track. And I think it's interesting because a lot of times we tend to kind of isolate the classes, but in certain ways, each class kind of builds off the other when it comes to track composition and the changing, you know, track surfaces. So the twins have really the super twins, have the greatest advantage, because they not only get to watch the production twins, but then watch the singles and watch two classes race on that track and see how the surface is changing. And I've always kind of noticed that they stand on the gates and they watch the other classes, but they're watching not just the riders and what's happening, but the track itself. So the production twins really don't have that advantage. So when they qualify during the day, during their day settings, they're having to ride a bike that could potentially not be set up well for this track at all, because it changes so much from the day to night and the moisture in the track, so on. So that's what I'm going to keep my eye on in this, especially at Indy, with the cushion and how it might change throughout the night, and definitely see how the production twins maybe adjust their riding style since they can't adjust their bikes,
Yeah, that track's going to change throughout the day, and it might be different the next night. You never know. I like that Volusia was a completely different racetrack the next night. There was a lot higher groove, and you never know what's going to happen at the Indy Mile. That was one of my favorite tracks when I went there too. And like Brad said, their first round of practice, you can go wide open all the way around the track. For somebody that's never been there before, to relate it to maybe one of the most popular miles, the Springfield Mile. Springfield's a perfectly symmetrical track. I mean, the corners are both a quarter mile apiece, and the straightaways are a quarter mile apiece. It seems like Indy, the straightaways are a lot longer, so you have tighter corners. So it really makes you rely on riding and your riding skill. You really slide it into the corner, and then you grab a handful and point the bike down the next straightaway. And it's a really fun racetrack to ride. So I'm really looking forward to it. And don't forget, next week, the AFT Show will be live from the Indy Mile.
That's right. And next week, gosh, it is like right around the corner. So Scotty, before we sign off, I want to hear your picks. I know you asked Brad his picks. I'm going to limit you to one. We can't say the whole field. So who are your
one
in the singles, production twins, and the super twins class for Indy Mile?
So I'm going to make
on Thursday. I'll ask you this again when we get out there. But
okay. So I'm going to make a lot of my friends mad at me for picking one rider, right? You're putting me on the spot.
You're going to get angry texts. You're going to get hate texts after that.
I'm turning my phone on Do Not Disturb right now. But singles class, I've got to go with Shayna Texter. She's the winningest riders in singles history. She has a lot of experience, and she always goes well on that mile. And like you've pointed out a couple times this year, she's back on the same motorcycle with the same crew chief on the same team as she was last year. That's extra confidence for her going into the Indy Mile. Production twins.
You're gonna make even more enemies now.
Man, I got a lot of friends in there too. So, Rispolkos. Eslick. That's one word. I slid it all together.
You have to stick with Rispoli. That came out of your mouth first. I heard it. You can't take it back. It fell out.
All right. Okay, I'm good with that. The 43 is going to win at Indy. How about that? A 43. Okay, and so let's go to the Super Twins class. Everybody is chasing the big number 9, but my prediction is the 4 bike. Brian Smith. Vance Hines is based out of Indianapolis. Brian Smith has won there before, and he's going to do it again. And he's got help because Vance Hines, Harley-Davidson, the Vance Hines team's right there out of Indianapolis. Wants to say extra special thanks to Vance Hines and Harley-Davidson for being our sponsor of today's show. That's Kristen Beat. I'm Scotty Dibler. We'll catch you guys next Thursday from the Indy Mile.
Over 130 miles per hour. I love it.